Hi there. My name is Red Downing. I'm a master's student in mass communication with a strong research focus in communication studies and interpersonal relationships. I probably have to be a little bit quieter. I have to be quieter because it is 2:16 in the morning. Yeah. It's not just that I couldn't sleep, but I took a nap. I fell asleep. It felt amazing. You have to trust me there. But now we're here. So I figured maybe I can use my time wisely and go over something really cool, one of my favorite topics. And that, my dear friends, is emotional intelligence. We're only going to go over the definition. This is just a website I found, one of the first things that popped up. I had read the little snippet they give you, and I like how they chalked it up. We're not going to go over a whole lot of it because I think there's some opinions in here. So emotional intelligence, or EI, it's also EQ, which stands for emotional quotient, similar to IQ, which is intelligence quotient. So it's EI or EQ, is the ability to perceive, interpret, demonstrate, control, and use emotions to communicate with and relate to others effectively and constructively. Very important keywords in here, folks. Effectively and constructively. So it's not just in a sense of the capacity to perceive emotion of others and yourself and understand them, interpret, like they said here. That's a good keyword too, interpret. But it's also the capacity to utilize them effectively. Love it. Love it. This ability to express and control emotions is essential, but so is the ability to understand, interpret, and respond to the emotions of others. Now, I found this, which I may have taken before, but it looks really familiar. I'm assuming that's pronounced Schutte, but it's the Schutte Self-Report Emotional Intelligence Test. If I were you, I would just type in that sucker right there into Google and take the test. The Schutte Self-Report Emotional Intelligence Test is a method of measuring general emotional intelligence. I didn't give us anything too hard. There are measures out there that you have to pay a lot for, that they actually use for studies and things of that nature. But this just gives us a general idea. And I think I've taken it before, but I retook it now. Why is it important? EI is the ability to understand and regulate. I highlighted that because it's a good keyword. Regulate emotions in oneself and in others. High EI is associated with more optimism, greater impulse control, better mood, more empathetic perspective taking, more closeness and warmth in relationships, more persistence under frustrating circumstances, and other similar outcomes. Solid. Solid. What can I use it for? Here, perfect. It's a starting point to work on your emotional intelligence and to check your progress. It should only be used as your own personal and professional development tool. Okay, they have to say it in here. It is not intended to be applied to your students. So if I was teaching a class, it's not intended for that sort of thing. Now I could, because I'm telling you, I think one of my teachers had given us this. But again, it's a starting point. It gives you the overarching idea of your own emotional intelligence. So, this measure includes a 33-item self-report. That's important to note, too. Self-reporting, it's got a lot of criticisms to it, just like every other measure, but it comes with a certain amount of bias to self-reporting and social desirability bias and the Hawthorne effect. Well, the Hawthorne effect is typically if you're being observed. We're going to stick with the social desirability bias. Look at that. Keep in mind that your responses may be biased by knowing that the scale measures EI in the first place. So two types of overarching biases. Social desirability. I want everybody to know that I have high EI. And then it's already biased because you know what it's measuring. So, just remember that. How to read the results. The mean score across many large samples is about 124 with a standard deviation of about 113. Excuse me, just 13. That's a gigantic standard deviation. Not 13. 113 would be a gigantic standard deviation. Anyway, I'm just making myself laugh. So, what was my score? My score was about 1.5, a little bit more than a half higher. 1.5 standard deviations from the mean. Okay, and I wrote some notes down, but this is important too. So scores below 111 or above 137 are usually high or low or high. Men and women perform differently in this test, with women scoring significantly higher with a mean of 131 than men with a mean of 125. Okay, so what I did is, knowing that there was social desirability bias, knowing I was going to use this for a video, for instance, and knowing people were going to see it, I went over it twice. Not that that helps too much, but I went over it twice. So look at this. Look at these notes. Don't forget social desirability bias, though it's not necessarily stigmatized. If it were more stigmatized, say, for instance, sexual preferences or just sexual characteristics, it's likely that I would be even more biased when it comes to social desirability. So the blue is what I did at first, the green is the check marks, and the red is the redos. So I subtracted, I changed two answers. It was at first 116, you get the general idea. Went to 114, and then here's the second part. I didn't change anything on there. I did subtract, obviously, from the top up there. So my score was 147. Now, to me, it makes sense. But I know a little bit about measures. So when you're, when you're doing these scales here, 1 through 5, Likert type scales, especially self-reporting stuff, you often shouldn't answer, I keep doing that, man. I'm just going to blame that I'm tired. You shouldn't answer with neither disagree nor agree, because it's neutral. If you want a better score about yourself, you score not the neutral. So if I'm not mistaken, so I just took out the 3s basically, except for one. I arrange events, others enjoy. I just couldn't really think of anything. Most of the time people invite me out for some reason. So I was like, well, that'll be the one that's neutral. So one of the reasons why my score might be so high is because I just refuse to be neutral. And with a lot of scales like this, that's going to happen. For instance, if you want to take something like the dark triad scale, that's really interesting. Maybe we'll go over that one of these days. The dark triad scale online, if you take out the neutrals, you're going to have a more extreme score. So, that's all I really have to talk about. It's already 10 minutes. But the whole overarching point was that I want y'all to take this test, and I want y'all to see where you lie on this scale, because it gives you a general idea of emotional intelligence. Now, there's a few things that play into this sort of thing, which is this right here. Women score significantly higher than men. So, since I'm a man with a higher score, it's likely going to be perceived as more feminine. That makes sense across a whole range of things. Typically, women go into professions that are more people-oriented. Typically, these are strong words, okay? Typically, men go into professions that are more thing-oriented. Whenever I hear something like that, I think about mechanics. They work with their hands and they work with tools and things. So, in my case, this thing might be perceived as a little bit more feminine, and that's okay. That's completely okay. And in the same stretch, if a woman is less emotionally intelligent, it might be perceived as more masculine. Maybe. These are hard maybes. It just depends on the person. And all of that is okay. The only reason why I'm talking about it now is because we like to put things into boxes to understand them better. Okay, now go try out this scale, preferably not at 2:30 in the morning. Have fun. Now get the hell out of here. I'm going to see y'all in the next video. Thanks for watching. Okay, quick point I wanted to make. Sometimes my brain runs faster than my words, and I don't finish my whole entire point. What I meant with the masculine and feminine example was that if you score higher or lower than your mean given your gender, that doesn't make you masculine or feminine. Doesn't mean you should try to be more masculine or feminine. It's just a score. And if you go around flaunting your score, like I'm showing all of y'all, mine's a little bit higher than a man's average, you might think of me as more feminine. Not that big of a deal. And we might do that just to be able to understand ourselves better, or understand other people for that matter. So yeah, there was another thing. Oh, when I think of those examples, so I use the example of mechanics, nurses also. And then relating it back to me, it's that I would like to become a professor that has to deal with people and not things. So I wanted to clarify that so I don't get stabbed in the back. Good night.